Bam.
This is Sarah Braasch, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
Thanks for coming on the show. We got Will here. Hey, Will, thanks for bringing Sarah back on the show.
Yeah, glad to be on the show. I'm probably looking a little weird right now because I'm looking on X for where our link is.
I just
But
posted to you.
did you post it as Pete Turner?
I posted as Pete A. Turner. Yeah.
Pete
Everyone,
A.
you can
Turner.
follow us on X. All of us have accounts on X. Sarah Braasch does. Pretty easy to type in Sarah Braasch. Wilfred Reilly. Will W630 is his handle. Pete A. Turner.
Yeah,
So,
we got a lot of Pete Turners here. We got multiple Pete Turner accounts. We got Pete A. Turner. Let's see if we are live.
Yeah.
Okay. Real Jeremy Carl. This is actually an interesting episode. I'm going to retweet. But
yeah.
All right, I'm not seeing this. Secrets of trophy hunting.
Well, Sarah,
Anyway,
welcome back. What's new in your life? Well, Will works on that.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to say thank you so much for having me on, because I want to talk about something that I think is a very important issue that needs to get out to the public, especially to the Yale community. So just quickly to remind your viewers, if people don't know who I am, I'm the Karen who was part of one of the Living While Black episodes, which I refer to as a race hoax. Mine was the one that happened at Yale, the Napping While Black event. And so I went, super viral in a matter of moments, and was, vilified across the globe as, the Yale Karen, the Yale Nazi. And so just that's who I am. But what the reason why, and so I've been battling with Yale for years to get the truth out. And the reason why we're doing this episode today is because something has just happened that's really important for people to know about, and especially in light of the mass shooting that occurred at Brown in December, just a couple months ago. And so what happened is that Yale, and this is part of Yale's MO, as far as I'm concerned, they've been waging, a campaign of, harassment and intimidation against me for years now. And this initial incident was years and years ago now, in 2018, and Yale is still attacking me even today. So what happened is in November, I got a call on November 10th from a Yale police officer, Eric Bailey. And Yale, he accused me, and he absolutely accused me of having sent a death threat. And he said that I sent this death threat on November 7th via the Office of Institutional Equity and Accessibility website, on a form on their website. And he said that I said I was going to come to Yale's campus on November 11th, and that I was going to kill Yale President Maureen McGinnis, I was going to kill former President Peter Salovey, and that I was going to kill anyone that I deemed to have participated in the race hoax against me. And that he also said that I said that I was inspired by the Charlie Kirk assassination. And so this is, and I consider it absolutely a full-fledged accusation, because he told me when he called me that he 100% knew that the death threat came from my IP address. Okay, so now I actually felt like, and now I think that also just, it's important to know, and I think this is just a little too coincidental to be just a coincidence, is that this happened right after Harvard professor Danielle Allen was supposed to give a talk as part of Yale's Trust in Higher Education Committee Speaker Series on November 4th. I had reached out to her a couple weeks prior and asked her not to participate in Yale's fraud, and not to participate and not to help Yale deprive me of my federal civil rights, etc. And so I did not ever actually speak with Harvard professor Danielle Allen, but she did not participate in her speaker series talk as part of Yale's Trust in Higher Education Committee, which is a fraud in and of itself, a complete farce. And we could talk more about that, but that might be a whole other show. But anyway, so I believe she did not participate in that, and she backed out. And I never actually spoke to her. But what she did instead is that she participated in a debate at the Yale Political Union that was sponsored by the Buckley Institute. And it happened in the evening of November 4th. And her talk that was supposed to have been with the Trust in Higher Education Committee co-chairs, Beverly Gage and Julia Adams, was supposed to have occurred earlier in the day. So I believe that she backed out because I had reached out to her. So I think that this death threat that the Yale police accused me of, I believe that it may have been, and there's the question about this, but I believe that it may have been a fake death threat created by Yale, in part to retaliate against me, because I had reached out to Danielle Allen, the Harvard professor, and she had backed out of this talk that she was supposed to give. That's what I believe. But I also believe that Yale had other reasons for doing this. And now this is par for the course for Yale. They've been doing this kind of thing because I know it seems crazy. And I know the first response of a lot of people is like, that sounds so crazy. Like they just can't believe that an Ivy League higher ed institution like Yale, would do something like this. But Yale has been doing this kind of thing for years. In 2019, Yale called me and accused me of a plot to bomb the 2019 commencement ceremony. Yale has been accusing me, including former Yale police chief Ronnell Higgins. They have been accusing me publicly of trying to lynch Black students at Yale for years. Repeatedly. Yale, when I was living in Las Vegas, Yale swatted me like some crazy number of times. Crazy number of times. It got to the point where the Las Vegas Police Department, and they were so sweet to me, they just stopped showing up at my apartment door, and they would just call me and they would just be like, Sarah, are you okay? Do you have a gun? Are you going to kill anybody? Because that's what Yale said you were going to do, or that's what the Connecticut state police said that Yale police said you were going to do.
Let's break into this a little bit. So Yale University is, I'm really figuring out how to phrase this. Yale University accused you of planning to bomb their commencement at one point. And it looks like my image is kind of speaking slowly here and so on, but whatever, that just shows I'm deep and wise. So, okay, what was the basis for that? I mean, I assume you didn't say in a fit of pique, I'm going to show up there with explosives. Where did they get that from? Was there a message sent by an opponent of yours, or did they make it up in your opinion? Like, where did that idea come from?
It was completely bogus, of course. I would never in a million years do something like that, think about doing something like that, even suggest that I was doing something like that. Now, so this is why it was completely just to harass me. Now and I can't even remember it right now. I could find it, but I can't even remember right now exactly what it said. But they said that I had tweeted something out on Twitter. And I remember that what I tweeted was just completely obviously I'm sure I was angry, I'm extremely angry, I'm like my avatar on X, I'm the furious Sarah. But I would never in a million years even suggest that I was going to bomb the commencement ceremony. And I think that I don't remember exactly what I said but it was completely, I remember saying like, this was a completely benign, tweet. And there was zero reason. They were just trying to harass me.
Yeah, now we're last thing before Pedro jumps in, but like we're both, as I understand, lawyers by background. Do you think there was an attempt to kind of present you as mentally ill? Because I've seen some of that back and forth in your comments, so that there's not maybe a couple $1 million lawsuit here. Like, look at this crazy woman. She's not just mad on Twitter. She's trying to kill innocent people. Where you'd take something like an angry Facebook post and you'd present that as sort of pseudo real evidence, and you'd send the cops over. I mean, or you would even attempt to irritate you or someone in that position to the point where actual mental symptoms develop. Like, do you think that was happening in Las Vegas? I mean, you mentioned the police were called 30, 40 times. That seems like pretty classic harassment, like abusive ex-partner stuff.
100%. You are 100% right. Like, I think that, Yale, I think that also Yale's trying to say that I'm crazy, I'm this psycho, and so they're, because I obviously have been incredibly, vocal about the fact that I'm going to file a federal civil rights lawsuit against Yale. I'm also going to ask the DOJ to investigate a lot of people, not just people at Yale, for conspiring with Yale to deprive me of my federal civil rights, which is like the lawsuit it's the KKK Act, which is what Don Lemon was just arrested for because he stormed that church. And he worked with that BLM mob to storm that church. And so he, was depriving the churchgoers of their federal civil rights, and he conspired to do that. That's what the KKK Act is. And so I'm going to be asking the DOJ to investigate a number of people, including a number of people at Yale, for that. So I absolutely, and that's another thing, is that I think there are multiple reasons why Yale would have done this. And I think was number one, it was an implicit threat. I think they wanted my physical address because I moved not too long ago. And I think it was an implicit threat to start swatting me again. I think that also they may have wanted to get access to my computer, and I've been very concerned about them, trying to get into my computer somehow, because I think that they want to prepare for the federal civil rights lawsuit. And I think you're absolutely right. I think they want to paint me as just like this crazy lady. And I do think that they wanted to retaliate against me because of Danielle Allen backing out of her talk. And I think they wanted to try to intimidate me into silence. So I think there's a number of reasons why Yale did this. And so I thought when I was having the phone conversation with the Yale police detective, Eric Bailey, that was on November 10th, I actually almost felt like I was starting to turn him to my side, right? Like I was telling him the whole backstory, everything that Yale had done to me. And so, and I almost had hopes, and I know that I sent you the email exchange that I had with him, and also that Officer Rainville. So I almost thought, I asked him, I actually begged him, I said, please investigate this. Please investigate this and find out who sent this. Because, and don't be surprised if it came from inside Yale, and don't be surprised if it came from the Yale admin. And the other thing that's interesting is that this was on the Office of Institutional Equity and Accessibility website. Now, Yale had just implemented a policy where you can no longer release to the public any materials that are part of an OIEA investigation, and you can be punished under the Student Code of Conduct if you do that. And there was a mini uproar of this, so I really want people to understand what happened after this, which is even more shocking. So of course there was the mass shooting. So I was talking to this Eric Bailey, this Yale police detective, Eric Bailey. So my final communication with him was on November 24th, and I was still asking him to please investigate, give me an update, let me know what's going on. And so he basically sent me an email that basically said, it was very peremptory, and it was basically just said, I'll give you an update if and when I have it. And it was basically just like, to paraphrase, don't call us, we'll call you, and, don't hold your breath. So then, of course, in December, the mass shooting at Brown happens. Now, before the mass shooting at Brown, I actually called the FBI. And the FBI was very dismissive of me. And I was really surprised by that. And I have theories about why that is. And we could talk about that, but I just, so people understand the chain of events. So then there's the mass shooting at Brown, right? And so I did a series of videos. This could be a whole other show too, where I just think that, the one of the big issues at Brown was that you had these woke DEI police, and they were like the Keystone Cops, right? It took the homeless guy that was living in the building where the mass shooting took place to catch the killer, and that was the only reason. He took the car information, and that was the only reason why the police, including the Providence police chief, that was the only reason why they found that guy, the killer, in that storage unit. I believe it was in New Hampshire, after he had gone and killed. It was the MIT professor, right? Nuno Loureiro. He went and killed that brilliant, I think he was like an astrophysicist or something like that. He was just this brilliant professor. And it's so horrifying. So I made a bunch of videos about how it is anti-white racism is the reason why they had a slew of Clery Act violations. They didn't release timely warnings. They didn't release emergency alerts. The students on campus didn't even know for a very long time that the shooting even happened. They couldn't find the shooter. They let the shooter get away. There was the janitor who said that he had been warning campus security and campus police about the shooter because he'd been watching him act very suspiciously and go in and out of that building like he was casing it. And so all of this, I made a bunch of videos about how, like, I feel very strongly it's anti-white racism because the woke DEI presidents and police chiefs and professors and the admins, they all decided that it was racist against Black people to have a safe campus and to have an effective police force. And I feel very strongly that played a huge role in why this was such a debacle, why it happened in the first place. And but then just to move this along quickly is that, so once the mass shooting at Brown happened, obviously I was extremely concerned, and I just thought, what if I'm wrong? What if it's not a fake death threat created by Yale? And what if it's one of my deranged stalkers who sent this? Who knows who it is? And for a second, I thought, like, it didn't turn out to be the case, but I thought, what if there's some connection to what happened at Brown? And I think
let me jump in here, Sarah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, jump in.
Because I have some questions. So if you're getting swatted in Las Vegas, how has Vegas Metro responded to that? Have they started their own investigation? This is a waste of their resources. There's ways to track this stuff. What's their stance? And then you keep referring to Yale like it's an entity. So I'm curious. Well, I guess who's the they at Yale, and
Yeah.
obviously at some point you'll be able to compel discovery, or they'll have to settle with you in some way, right? So are we going to find out who the they is? Do you have any theories on that? So can we just do Vegas and then do the they at Yale?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Las Vegas Police Department, as far as I know, they didn't do any investigation of it. Like they weren't it did not strike me. They basically just they would have preferred to just wash their hands of the whole thing, right? Like I mean, I think I explained to them that this was a harassment campaign by Yale to terrorize me. And I think that the Las Vegas Police Department, I think they believed me, but I don't think they didn't want to get involved, right? And which I understand. But what they did do is they were so sweet to me, and they stopped showing up at my apartment door, and they would just call me. They would just call me and just be like, Sarah, you okay? I'm fine. Okay, great. And then that was it. They would just call me. They wouldn't show up at my door. They were very kind to me. And even before when they showed up at my door, and I think, at first they probably were a little bit scared. Like they were like, there's lots of Looney Tunes in Las Vegas. They were probably just like, who's this crazy person that we have to deal with now? But I think like they talked to me for like 2 minutes, and they were like, and they realized that like, I'm just like this really, nice, sweet lady that's, being harassed by Yale because I'm exposing them as the monsters that they are.
So, and who's the they at Yale?
So the they at Yale, like it's very explicit. And what's interesting, and this could be a whole other show, is that current President Maureen McInnes is on like a campaign right now to try to get rid of as many of them because the lawsuit is coming. So, but like they made public statements about me. They made public statements about me, multiple public statements about me, basically just accusing me of having perpetrated racist harassment. So they at Yale, and there is a long list, but also it includes professors. They published like people that I had worked with at the Justice Collaboratory at Yale Law School, including Yale Law Professor Monica Bell. I worked with her at the Justice Collaboratory. She knows me. And she published an article in the NYU Law Review that's like been cited like some huge number of times, right? It's everywhere. Like there's an entire body of work. There's an entire cottage industry in academia and journals defaming me as because I was trying to, and it's ongoing. Like currently right now, I'm sure there's at least one article being published this month that accuses me of trying to lynch Black students at Yale by calling the Yale police. And this was the other thing that I wanted to talk about. Well, I'll just tell people what the chain of events, and then we can talk about this because I think it's so important. Like the woke DEI police departments and at universities, and not just at universities, but I'm obviously right now here to talk about universities, and not just at Yale and not just at Brown. Like they changed their policies and actually in doing so, perpetrated a number of Clery Act violations. And Trump said he was going to open a Clery Act investigation, and we can talk about what that means at Brown. And I asked at the end of December, I ended up reaching out to the Department of Education via email. And I said, please open an investigation at Yale into their Clery Act violations. So there's a whole slew of Clery Act violations surrounding this death threat, because according to Yale, this was a credible death threat. Yale did not issue a timely warning. Yale did not issue an emergency alert. Yale didn't tell anyone. They're trying to hide it now. They didn't even investigate it. They failed to act in any way, even after the Brown shooting, until I reached out to the Department of Education at the end of December. And then a couple days later, at the beginning of January, I think around January 5th-ish, I got a voice message from the Yale police. So now I believe that the Department of Education prompted them to act. I asked the Department of Education, please open a Clery Act investigation at Yale. Now, the Clery Act means that universities, in order to receive federal funding, they have to implement certain public safety procedures. And these are especially around transparency. So they have to report certain crimes to the Department of Education. They have to issue certain timely warnings, emergency alerts. They have to let the public and the campus community know when there's a safety threat, a serious safety threat. So the Clery Act is named after a student named Jean Clery, a young woman who was murdered on campus. And so that's why the feds implemented these policies. So the Yale police contacts me. Oh yeah, go ahead. Oh, were you going to say something? The Yale police contacts me at the beginning of January-ish. They call me and leave a message, and that's that Officer Rainville. And he wants me to call him back on his cell. He really wants me to call him back on his cell. So I just refused. I sent another email to that Eric Bailey, and I just said, I want everything in writing. I'm not going to communicate with you over cell phone. I want everything with you guys in writing because I trust you about as far as I can throw you. And so I get an email back from this Officer Rainville. Oh, all of a sudden Yale has investigated. They've investigated 2 months later. They've investigated this death threat. But guess what? To the surprise of absolutely no one, they have no way of figuring out the IP address of the person who sent it. Even though initially they told me that they 100% knew it came from my IP address. They now have no way to figure out which IP address this came from because the Office of Institutional Equity and Accessibility website anonymizes IP addresses. So first of all, they did not spend 2 months figuring out that the OIEA website anonymizes IP addresses, okay? And I believe they already knew this, from way back when. So this makes me think even more that it was a fake death threat created by Yale. But it didn't even take them a day to even if they didn't know this and they were investigating it, it didn't even take them a day to figure out that the OIEA website anonymized.
Yeah. So just jumping in a little bit, it seems like there are a lot of different things that you're talking about here. So when Pete asked who are the they at colleges like Yale, I mean, you mentioned an individual professor, but it seems like the backbone of that would be kind of the diversity infrastructure maybe at these institutions. Like, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially their VP of it was Student Life, and then it became U Life, and Peter Salave made her the head of belonging at Yale, which is this woke DEI bureaucracy that they created because of me. And they explicitly said it was because of me, because I was trying to lynch Black students at Yale via the campus police.
So the title would be something like President of Belonging?
So she's her name is Kimberly Goff Cruz.
Okay.
And she's still there.
That's just hilariously Orwellian.
And she's the VP of University Life, and she was the head of belonging at Yale, which is why they perpetrated the race hoax, so that they could use me as their Nazi, so that they could justify creating this. And now she's on record, I believe it's in the Yale Daily News, saying that she'd been wanting for years to implement belonging at Yale. And so she had her golden opportunity, when this happened, to me in 2018. Now, what's really interesting is that Maury McInnes in May of 2025 ended belonging at Yale and just said, it's over. It was only supposed to be 5 years and it wrapped up on schedule. It's perfect. We did it. Woo-hoo! We solved all the racism at Yale. It's done now. We don't need belonging at Yale anymore. So the month prior, in April 2025, she had her inauguration, And I joked about it. I was posting about it. It was insane. She basically had herself, it was a coronation. She basically had herself like crowned the woke DEI queen of Yale. She must have said belonging at Yale like 30 times during her speech. I'm not even kidding. She had a crown. No, she didn't have a crown. She had a bejeweled necklace that was fixed on her by Kimberly Goff Cruz, the head of Belonging at Yale. Maureen McGinnis was full blown. She was hardcore, full blown woke DEI. And I'm gonna tell you why I think they did a 180 on this. But she had a golden scepter. She had this staff that was like worthy of the Pope. She had a throne. There was like this like chair that she sat on that was like this 200-year-old chair, you know, that had been was created by someone, you know, whatever, and passed down through the generations. Like, it was a full-blown coronation. And she was it was woke, belonging at Yale, belonging at Yale. Now, at the beginning of 2025, she had created a new president's website. It was all belonging at Yale, Sarah's evil. And then in March of 2025, I know that the feds opened an anti-Semitism investigation at Yale. She had her coronation in April 2025. It was still woke DEI, woke DEI, woke DEI, belonging at Yale. And then in May 2025, she's like, oh, belonging at Yale is over. It's done now. But even so, in the announcement that belonging at Yale is over in May of 2025, she reposted this announcement by an old announcement by Peter Salovey that included reforming the Yale Police Department and included the 21CP report, which is basically just it's a condemnation of me as trying to, you know, lynch Black students at Yale. And it basically, was like a de facto quasi-judicial process without my knowledge or participation. And this could be a whole other episode, but 21CP, that comes out of Obama's task force on policing in the 21st century. And my advisors at the Justice Collaboratory at Yale Law School, Tom Tyler and Tracy Mears, were on that task force. They're intimately involved with 21CP, the consultancy that came out of that. And 21CP has been, you know, vilifying me for years and years now. So these are all like huge, you know, egregious ethical violations for them not to disclose the relationship that they have with me, just like Monica Bell didn't disclose it. And then these condemnations of me as like this evil racist. But so I think, and you tell me if you think this is crazy. I really believe that, I believe Yale made some kind of backdoor deal with the Trump administration. I think that they did, and I think they're not disclosing it. And I think that part of that agreement may have been that, that the Trump administration is not going to help me. I don't think they're not doing anything, obviously, to stop me, but they're not going to help me, you know, secure justice with Yale. I honestly think that could be true. I do.
I don't know. I mean, it's theoretically possible. If that happened, that would be, I mean, Trump wouldn't be involved in that. That would be someone like an ADA or someone like that would be the person picking up the ball there. Maybe Yale's pretty influential. I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't really actually ever worked with the Trump administration. I was invited to go to the White House once for some kind of Black conservative event. And I had some conditions on it, and they basically just said no. And it was like, okay. And I never really popped back. But yeah, the description you're giving is pretty interesting. I mean, like anyone who's worked in higher education, I think Pete will have probably the final question. He's heading out to the jiu-jitsu dojo, as I understand. But Yeah, gotta stay up. I personally, I haven't been to the dojo in years. I'm pretty good in the gym, pretty good in the range, very weak in the boxing ring or rolling these days. You know, I think the full hand beats the empty one. But basically the anyone who's been involved in higher education knows that they do have these crazy officials. I mean, when Sarah's describing the vice president, the president of belonging, and the ceremony where they give them their chair, you're an endowed chair of whatever, and they put the mace in your hand and so on, that very much happens. I was the ombudsman of a decent sized state university for a while, and they do everything but crown you. It's pretty ridiculous. In Kentucky, you have to promise not to duel. It's all very funny. But at any rate, yeah, I don't know what the background details of this are, but I guess the real question in almost conclusion would be sort of where do you see this going down the road? I mean, what do you see the end game of? Well, Pete, first, do you have a question before I ask that one? What are your thoughts
No,
on this?
I'm interested in seeing this too because it's such a it's a drama, right? And so I'm interested in seeing what the answer is.
Yeah,
Go
so I
ahead.
mean, I guess what we're both asking would be, Sarah, where do you see the end game of this being? I mean, so I don't know if Trump has come to an agreement with Yale about you and other students there. They've had a bunch of these issues, and I mean, when you talk about the end of the belonging era and then being called on the carpet for anti-Semitism, I mean, I think we all probably saw that video where Yale, Brown, and whoever else, one of the public Ivies, were asked, do you think it's anti-Semitic to have a mob on campus chanting "kill the Jews"? And they all gave these ridiculous answers like, I don't know, depends. We have a strong free speech policy. So are they going to face some sort of penalty for that, or were they able to negotiate some kind of sneaky way out? We may never know the answer. But Sarah, for you personally, what do you want to do with this? You mentioned a lawsuit. What's your end game goal? Are you going to be able to get through academia, finish with the degree? Are they still? Do you think they're going to harass you down the road? Do you want to return as a professor? What do you think? What do you think's going to happen here?
Well, and also Yale President Peter Salovey was supposed to have his hearing be public in front of the Committee on Higher Education and the Workforce about anti-Semitism, and he made an arrangement where last minute it ended up being behind closed doors without press. And I was so angry, and I had reached out to the committee and I had said, I know, I mean, obviously I think that it's intimately intertwined, but I said, you need to ask him about the witch hunt at Yale, because this is, this woke DEI anti-white racist monstrosity at Yale is why Jews are being terrorized on campus, because because it is an anti-white racist monstrosity, and it's about the whole oppressor and oppressed hierarchy, and they code Jews as oppressors and as white. So that's why they're justifying terrorizing Jews on campus, but under these woke DEI industries and bureaucracies. But for me personally, like what I really want to do, and I reached out to Timothy Riemann, who's a fellow. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Marines, and he's a fellow at the Jackson Institute at Yale. He had just written an op-ed about how Yale doesn't include race in the descriptions of suspects, and how this is a huge problem after the shooting at Brown. And he actually drove from Yale to Brown when that shooting happened, because he had a niece on campus who was hiding in like a jewelry store or something. She was in the building where the shooting took place, and she, wow, thank God, was able to get out, and she was hiding. So he wrote this op-ed about saying, like, it is not okay not to include the race of suspects in the descriptions of suspects. And Yale also they've had to backtrack on this because of a violent crime spree on campus. But Yale also changed their ID policies at the beginning of 2023 to say that that anybody could walk into any campus building, including a dorm, without ID, without being asked for ID. And that was explicitly because of me also. And so what I really want to do, and I think this is so important, and this is why I'm so grateful that we did this, is that this isn't just about me. Obviously, I want justice for myself, but the reason why I'm so upset right now is because, like I said, the campuses are not safe. This is a big part of the reason why the shooting at Brown happened, and God forbid there's a shooting at Yale now. I know that they do have heightened security measures in place, but the head of public safety, Dwayne Lovello, he just lied to the Yale Daily News reporter about why they're continuing those heightened security measures and about whether or not there have been any credible threats against the Yale community. These campuses are not safe. They're vulnerable to shootings like the one that took place at Brown. And this is because these woke DEI admins decided that it's racist against Black people to have a secure campus and an effective police force. They are implementing policies that put students and staff and professors, the entire community, at risk for being shot if, God forbid, another shooting takes place. And I think that at a lot of campuses, I know that Yale now has heightened security measures. And Yale has also been dealing with a violent crime spree now for years, which is why they did have to backtrack on some of their the policies that they changed because of me to make the campus less secure. They've now had to backtrack on those and make the campus more secure because they've been dealing with this violent crime spree for years now. But this is really, I really want to get these policies changed. This is ridiculous, and it's not just ridiculous and asinine. It's not just stupid. It's dangerous, and it's putting the safety of these campus communities at risk. This woke DEI nonsense, and it has to stop. And so I reached out to this lieutenant colonel in the Marines who's a fellow at the Jackson Institute. I understand. I don't think he was very kind to me. I don't think he really wants to get involved. I understand, but I think that this is, I'm sort of like, I know I seem a little bit like, riled up, and I am riled up because I can't get anyone to report on this. And I think this is I know that the news cycle is insane right now. People are just jumping from wild event to wild event, especially like on X. But I just feel like, but no one's talking about the Brown shooting anymore. And I feel like this is a really important issue, and no, I can't get anyone to report on it. And I just think that this is something that we need to be talking about. So for me personally, yes, I want to secure justice against Yale. I'm going to file my federal civil rights lawsuit. I'm still within my statute of limitations because Yale has, never stopped attacking me. Obviously this death threat actually extends my, statute of limitations, but I'm hoping to, get everything filed this summer. I'm struggling financially. I'm struggling, to keep myself housed, which is why I moved to a less expensive city. But I'm just, but I'm still also determined to finish my dissertation. I have to get it finished right away because I'm getting to the point where I think that, Yale's going to try to come up with an excuse to unload me if I don't get that done ASAP. So I'm just trying to stay calm and keep calm and carry on. What else can I do?
That's it. That's your job right now. Get that dissertation done, get that lawsuit filed, and get to discovery, because that will reveal all, right? In the meantime, it's just a whole bunch of back and forth about this, and it's hard to get an investigation going, right? So get the law working on your side, and I'm sure you'll find a way to do that. Thank you very much for coming on. Will, any final words before we wrap this up?
No, not really. Actually, I mean, just hopefully I think you're right about discovery. Hopefully everything here gets brought to light. I think a lot of these things that might sound kind of nutty, I don't know if Yale's faking death threats, but a lot of this other stuff might very well turn out to be true. I mean, are the universities working behind the scenes with the Trump administration or the Biden administration to cover up some of this stuff they did? I actually guess I do have a comment here. I mean, as someone who's been at pretty high levels in business, as you guys have, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. Now, the Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination based on race. And for a long time, we've seen ads that pretty openly said, no whites, no Jews, no men. So, I mean, I suspect a lot of that's going to vanish. A lot of that's going to be memory hold, and people are going to deny they ever did that. And you're going to have some pretty powerful friends to make that stick. So people are probably trying to make those alliances right now. Yeah. So I do think those kind of deals are happening, and we're going to see a lot of that type of stuff. I mean, we talked with a detransitioner on my other podcast. Well, this isn't mine, this is Pete's, but Cut the Bull the other day. And what she said is that we just saw the first detransition lawsuit victory.
Yeah.
So $2 million, hell yeah, for those kids. But pretty much her assumption, mom's a doctor, is that in 10 years, every medical association is going to oppose trans surgeries and all that other nightclub shit. You can get devil horns on your head. And they're going to say that they never supported it. Like, there's going to be a bunch of stuff burnt off the internet. They're going to say it was a bunch of rogue doctors. It was their former leadership. So there's a lot of weird stuff out there, and people try to hide it, try to conceal it. Much more of it is real than you think.
Yeah. All right, everybody. This is Breakdown Show. If you like it, click like and subscribe. It's always helpful. You too. I'll say goodbye to you in a second. The rest of you all, I will see you on Monday.